Fixing a Hole was mainly written by Paul McCartney, despite carrying the usual Lennon-McCartney credit, and it was never meant to tell a conventional story. The hole, cracks, and unfinished paintwork were images for anything that interrupted his thoughts. McCartney saw the song as being about repairing his mental space, shutting down unwanted judgment, and giving himself permission to daydream. The people who could not get through his door were not entirely imaginary either. Fans did regularly gather outside his London home, and the lyric turned that real invasion of privacy into a broader complaint about people who believed they had the right to tell him how to think or to live. The song has collected several misleading explanations. One claimed that McCartney wrote it while repairing the leaking roof of Hyde Park, his remote farmhouse in Scotland. He really did own the rundown property, but he denied that the work directly inspired the song. Another theory held that Fixing a Hole described injecting heroin, an interpretation McCartney also rejected. He later connected the song partly with marijuana, independence, and the freedom to let his imagination wander without being corrected by self-appointed authorities. In his 2021 book, The Lyrics, he added an even stranger influence. After taking LSD, he sometimes saw a small blue opening when he closed his eyes, as though there were a visible hole in the darkness waiting to be filled. The Beatles began recording the song on February 9, 1967, but not at their usual home. All three studios at EMI's Abbey Road complex were occupied at that time, forcing them to work at Regent Sound on Tottenham Court Road. It became their first EMI recording session for a British album held at a London studio other than Abbey Road. Regent Sound was smaller, cheaper, and less technically advanced, and EMI engineer Jeff Emmerich could not work there because he was employed by EMI, so Regent's Adrian Ibbotson handled the equipment instead. The group completed the basic performance in only 3 takes, then returned to EMI on February 21st to add vocals, guitar, and other finishing touches. The most unusual guest at the Regent session was a stranger who had arrived at McCartney's home shortly before he left for the studio and announced that he was Jesus Christ. McCartney did not believe him, but decided that turning him away would be a terrible mistake on the extremely small chance that he was telling the truth. He invited the man inside for tea and eventually brought him to the session after receiving a promise that he would remain quiet. So Paul introduced him to the other Beatles as Jesus, and the band apparently accepted the situation with little fuss. The visitor sat through the recording, caused no trouble, and disappeared afterward without becoming part of the Beatles circle. The finished track sounds almost as unusual as the evening that produced it. George Martin played the prominent harpsichord on the basic recording, while Paul handled the bass. Ringo Starr played the swinging drum part, and George Harrison supplied the clipped electric guitar lines and biting double-tracked solo. The music keeps slipping between darker minor passages and brighter major ones, matching a lyric that moves between outside interference and the relief of returning to one's own thoughts. What sounds at first like a whimsical song about household repairs is really just McCartney defending his own imagination. And it was recorded while a man claiming to be Jesus quietly watched from the corner.